Hi, this is Aman here. Hope all of you are doing good in this period of lockdown. So, as the title of the video says, this video is intended for Spotfire developers who aspire to learn how to write Iron Python scripts in Spotfire to achieve customizations. So, a lot of times you see that Spotfire developers are presented with a requirement which involves achieving customizations, and they end up googling on the internet and they simply copy the code and paste it to their Spotfire report, and they tweak it to their need without understanding what the building blocks of the script are, how the script is written. So the script contains calls to methods, properties. Now, if you look at the Spotfire API, you see the classes and objects properties. All the classes and properties are very intricately designed, which learners find a tough nut to crack. But it is not so, to be frank. So, one who is familiar with the basic concepts of object-oriented programming will find it easier to access those properties and methods and use them in Iron Python scripts. So in today's session and in the upcoming sessions, we will learn how to access those methods and properties to be able to manipulate the components of a Spotfire to achieve customizations. When I say the components of Spotfire, I mean the visualizations, panels like details on demand panel, filter panels, and other properties of Spotfire like filtering schemes, markings, components like pages, and so on. So in today's session and in the upcoming session, we will see how to access those methods and properties to manipulate these features of this properties of these components to achieve customizations. So I'm not going into the history of IronPython and why IronPython when there are so many languages out there. You can read them on internet. So IronPython is built on derived from Python. You can think of IronPython like that, and it is a .NET compliant language. And you know the components of Spotfire is developed in .NET using C#. So IronPython allows us to access the components of Spotfire and manipulate them to a certain extent. It's not that anything can be accessed and changed in Spotfire using IronPython. For that, you need to write develop extensions using C# in Microsoft.NET and deploy them in Spotfire. That is beyond the scope of this session. IronPython scripts are most commonly executed with the help of a button or through a selection change in a list like a property control. So before going into Spotfire classes and objects, one must get familiar with the control structures which are available in IronPython, which is similar to Python because it is derived from Python. So the most important statements that will be used in IronPython are if, elif, for, loop, and while loop. While loop is hardly used because for loop is easier to implement than while loop. Of course, they achieve the same objective. Now this is how this is the syntax of if condition. So here what happens, the statements which are to be conditionally executed are indented by the same amount. For example, we have to execute these two statements if this condition is satisfied. So these two statements will be indented by the same amount. For programmers who are familiar with other programming languages like C, C++, or Java, you can write like this: if condition here opening brace, closing brace, and you can write the statements within a pair of braces. Suppose you are writing an if block in C, printf a sorry printf B. So if this condition is met, both these statements will be executed and A and B will be printed. So of course these two statements can be loosely typed. I mean, they need not be indented by the same amount. For example, you can write the second statement, print statement here, first statement somewhere here. As long as they are enclosed in a pair of braces, these two statements will belong to this condition, if condition. So if this condition is met, these two statements will be executed. But in case of Python, we don't have a pair of braces to enclose the statements in. We have to indent the statements by the same amount. For example, if condition, and there should be a colon here, print A, print B. So this is the Python or IronPython equivalent of this statement in C, C++ or Java. So here, if 5 is greater than 2, both the statements will be executed because both belong to if, because these two statements are indented by the same amount after this if condition. Next is if else if. We call it elif in Python. So it is similar to if, it's just that an else if condition is appended. So for statements belonging to if, they should be indented by the same amount. Similarly for elif, the statement should be indented by the same amount. So what happens here? If this condition is met, this statement will be executed. If this condition is false, this condition will be checked because this is else if. And in literally, what does else if means? Otherwise. Otherwise, if this, otherwise check for this condition. This is what it means. So if this condition fails, this will be checked. If you don't give else if or else, this condition will be checked. If this condition is false, means if these two conditions, if this condition is not met, nothing will be printed. Suppose this elif and else are not present, only if statement is present here. If 2 is greater than 3 or 3 is greater than 4, print 2. So if this condition is met, these two conditions are met. If this condition evaluates to true, 2 will be printed. If this condition evaluates to false, nothing will be printed. Now, if we want something else to be printed, if this condition evaluates to false, we need to give else. And if there are multiple conditions to be tested against, we need to give multiple elifs. So if this condition is false, check for this condition. If this condition is true, 3 will be printed. Now if this condition also fails to, 3 will not be printed, then else will be executed. 5 will be printed. Else means otherwise. If nothing is met, no conditions are met, else part will be executed. So 5 will be printed. So this is how you can check for multiple conditions. If, elif, if not this condition, then this condition. This is how you test. Now we have for loop. So in Spotfire, while writing IronPython scripts, most commonly, most of the times you will be required to loop through a collection of items. Now what is collection? A collection is a set of items which may or may not be of the same data type. So it can be a combination of string, integer, float, and so on, or it can be a combination of only string or only integers. That's what a collection is. So for example, you will be required to loop through a set of data tables to check for the existence of a data table in your Spotfire analysis. So what is that? It's a collection of data tables that you will be looping through. So you should be knowing how to loop through a collection. Similarly, you will be looping through a collection of pages. From pages, I mean tabs. Each tab is called a page in Spotfire. So you should know how to loop through the pages. So for looping, this is the structure we use most often. You may come across some other ways to loop through it. I am not going into that. Of course, you have a choice. But this is the most basic way and the more easiest way to loop through a collection. For value in collection, here collection could be a collection of data tables, a collection of pages. So every time a value is met in collection, value corresponds to that. So for each value of collection, these two statements will be executed. Here also, if you see, these two statements are indented by the same amount. That means these two statements belong to this for loop. So for each value in collection, these two statements will be executed. If you look at an example, here we have a collection. List is a collection. So suppose there is a list of numbers, integers 1 to 3. So how do you loop to the list? For val in list, print val. So for each value in list, I am printing val. So for each value in list, that value will be printed. So first, when the loop runs for the first time, val points to 1. So 1 is printed. During the next run of the loop, 2 is printed. And then 3 is printed at last. Of course, you can print anything here. I am printing val, you can print anything. You can print a string also, like this. Sorry. Suppose you are looping for I in list of, there should be a colon here, and the statement should be indented. Print A. So A will be printed as many times as there are elements in this list. For example, there are 5 elements in this list. A will be printed 5 times. If there are 10 elements in the list, A will be printed 10 times. So in Spotify also, you will be required to loop through a collection of pages or data tables, like this. Data table collection, like this. And then you will be printing something like, you will be accessing the name of each data table. Print item. Each item points to one element in this data table collection, which is what? A data table. Data table collection is a collection of data tables. So you will be accessing some properties of each data table, like this, like name. Just an example, we will see that later. So the basic structure for loop is for element in a collection, and then the following statements should be indented. There is a function called range. If you look at the syntax, range takes 2 parameters. It takes, I think, a third parameter also, which is the step value, which you can look up on the internet. What the example here, let's look at the example here. For example, range 1 or 3 will return 1 and 2. That is why here only 1 and 2 will be printed. Similarly here, range of 4 and 6 will return 4 and 5. So it returns 4 and 5. In this loop, it returns 4 and 5. That is 2 elements. So for each element, this statement will be executed. So what is the statement here? Print A. So 2 times A will be printed. You can write here 1 comma 3, 10 comma 12. So this statement will be executed as many times as there are items returned by this range function. So sometimes you will be required to loop through a set of elements in Spotify using their indices. So in that case, you will find the length of that collection. That is the number of items in that collection, and then you will loop through. We'll see that when we come across real examples. It will be premature to explain now. So this is what the range function achieves. Range of 1 and 3 returns 1 and 2. Range of 4 and 6 returns 4 and 5. So if I give a range of 1 comma 10, it will return number integers from 1 to 9. So whatever you give here will be executed 9 times, that is for each value returned. Of course the statement should be intended by the same amount here, and there should be a colon here. Okay, before going into the classes and properties that are used in Spotfire, let's go through the uh, concepts which need to be kept in mind while trying to access those methods and properties. There are only a certain set of concepts which you need to bear in mind. You need not need to have a full depth coverage of object oriented programming. I will touch upon only those topics which are required here. So first is enumeration. You must have heard of enum data type. So enumeration is enumerator is also a data type, which is a derived data type, user defined data type you can call it. In many languages, C, C++, Java, C Sharp. I am taking C Sharp for example. So that is used to name a list to declare a list of integer constants, which are named integer constants. For example, you want to create a group of integers, and that group contains 1 and 2. So you can name each of these integers and then you can group them. For example, you have two integer values, 10 and 20. You want to name each of these integers, so you can name 10 as A, 20 as B, and then you want to group them further, so you can group them as integer group. So this integer group contains what? 10 and 20. 10's name is A and 20's name is B, and this whole set is known by the name integer group. This is the enumerator. So how do we access the elements of a numerator? We access it by the name of the enumeration, that is week here, dot the name of the integer constant or the element. So there are two integer constants, 1 and 2. The name of 1 is Monday and 2 is Tuesday. So how do we access each of the values? Week dot Monday, week dot Tuesday. So week dot Monday will return 1, week dot Tuesday will return 2. So let me clarify here. You will not be required to create enumerators in IronPython. There are some of the properties or methods which will take values as enumerators, which will require you to access properties which are enumerators themselves. So in that case you will get perplexed as to why this value has been accessed in this manner. So I can tell you, we will see, like there is a property called docking placement of filter panels. I believe that is enumerator or a static class. So there you will not be accessing the setting values as docking placement is equal to left, docking placement equal to right. No. So you will be accessing some enumerator or a class variable to access those positional values. So to be able to understand it is important to understand this concept. That is why I am walking you through this concept. Otherwise you will not be required to create an enumerator. So this is how we create an enumerator and access its values. So enumerator is used to declare a list of named integer constants. So here we have created two integer constants, 1 and 2. We have named them. These are named. The names of 1 and 2 are Monday and Tuesday respectively. And this whole set is known by week. So how do we access each member? Week dot Monday, week dot Tuesday. And if you want to get the integer values, this is the syntax you can use. Okay, let's move on to classes and objects. So a class is nothing but a template using which you create objects. So for example, you can have a class of fruits and mango, apples are objects of the class fruits, simply put. Now so how do you access what are the components that a class constitute? It constitute variables or properties and methods. And how do you access the properties and methods of a class? Through its objects. So first an object of a class is created and then its properties or methods are accessed. For example, you have a class. This is how you access: object name dot method name, object name dot variable name, if that variable is accessible. Now this concept will be the basis of the technique of accessing the functions and properties in Spotfire through IronPython using a Spotfire API. So what happens in Spotfire, for example, there is a class called bar chart class. So when you have to access and manipulate the properties of a bar chart in your Spotfire report, you need to access bar chart class. Why? Because bar chart class contains the properties and methods of a bar chart which you find in Spotfire. So in Spotfire, whenever you create a bar chart, it is an object. So first you have to parse it as an object, and then through that object you access the properties and methods like this: bar chart object dot method name, bar chart object dot variable name. We will see that later. So for example, there is a class called human. It has a variable named name, and there is another variable called sleep hours. Now these are member variables, or you could have properties in place of variables. Now this is a function, public sleeping. This is a function. Don't go by the syntax. This is a loosely typed syntax. Just pay attention to the concept. And then there is another function or method called display. So how do you access these functions and these member variables? First you create an object which is called instantiation, and through that object you access these methods and variables. Object name, this is the object name obj, object dot name, object dot sleeping. So here this is a parameterized function. It takes a parameter, so we have passed a parameter to. Similarly, this is a function method which does not take any parameter, as it is a So how do we access this method? Object name dot method name. So 2 points to remember: a class contains methods, variables or properties, which is called encapsulation. Now how do we access the properties and methods defined in a class? Through an object. So first you create an object and then you access its methods and properties using a dot operator, like here. So similarly, when you will be working with visualization, for example, say pie chart. So you will create an object. You will parse your visualization into an object here. Suppose the name of that object is obj. Then you will write obj dot property of the pie chart class, because you are dealing with the pie chart class. Just like we are dealing with the human class here, there you are dealing with the pie chart class. So you will access the properties of the pie chart class. You will access the methods of the pie chart class. If it takes a parameter, you will pass a parameter. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, there is another concept of static members. If I go back to classes and objects, suppose I create another object, it will be allocated a different memory. It will not be a copy of the same object here, which is created here. That will be a different object. It will have a different memory allocation. Now if I assign a name to that second object, that value that will be stored at a different memory than this object. So that means that those two objects are not the same copies. Those are two different copies. But when you create a static member in a class, only one copy of that is created. which is shared by all the objects of the class. For example, here we have a class employee, we have a static member name, and then we have a function which is also static. Now suppose we create let us create this class. So it contains static member variables and static member function. Suppose I create one object employee object 1 equal to new employee. Employee object 2 equal to new employee. Okay. Now suppose I assign object 1 dot name equal to a, and then I assign object 2 dot name object 2 dot name. Now what happens here, you can see that these are two objects, object 1 and object 2. So you might be given to believe that these two are two different objects. This object 1 is different from this object 2, but it is not so. Objects are different, but this member variables and functions are shared by both the objects. So when you assign name when you assign a to the variable name in object 1 and then you assign b to the variable name of object 2, the original value gets overwritten because there is only one copy of the variable name that is created, and that is shared by these two objects. So object 1 has variable name, and then object 2 has the same variable. These two variables are shared by these two objects. So if I assign some value to name through object 1 and then I assign something else to this variable name through object 2, it will contain, this variable name will contain the value assigned through object 2. It gets overwritten because there is one copy for both object and object 2. Suppose you have one copy of book that is shared by another friend of yours. If you write something on that book, and since that book is being shared by your friend, he will see those scribblings on your book, because that same book is being shared by your friend. It's not that he is owning another copy of that book. If he or she were owning another copy of that book, he or she will not see that scribbling on that book which you have done on that book, because there is only one copy of the book which is being shared by both of you. He is able to see that scribbling. Same is the case here. This name variable is shared by both the objects. If I change the value of name through object 1 and then I change the object through object 2 and then again I change the name variable through object 1, it will contain the value assigned through object 1. So it will always contain the variable assigned through the last declared statement. Okay. So this was an important concept to learn, but again I would reiterate that you will not be required to create a static class. It's just that some of the values will be in the form of a class with static members, so you will not be directly accessing those values, but you will be accessing through the class. Okay, before that, let me tell you how this variable is accessed. One way is through this object, as we did. How are the variables or members of a class accessed? Through its object 1 dot name. object to.name. But since only one copy is created, you can access the variable directly through the class name like this. So static variables are variables are also called class variables. Why? And this is why they are called class variables, because they can be accessed directly using the class name. You did not create any object to access them. If I go back to our slide, here in a class, in a traditional class, how do we access the members? By creating through its object. First we create an object and then we access the elements of that class. Object dot variable name, object dot class name. But in case of a static member, we can directly access using the class name. We did not create an object. So there will be some properties which you will be accessing through the class name. For example, there is a bar chart, so there could be a static member, or there could be a property which is declared static. So you will be directly accessing that property using that bar chart class, bar chart dot that member. Similarly, you can access the methods directly using the class name. Okay, constructor is another method or a function. The only difference between a traditional method and a constructor is that a constructor is automatically invoked when an object of that class is created. That's it. And it's the main purpose of using a constructor is to assign initial values to the member variables. For example, and it has the same name as the name of the class. For example, here we have a class employee. The name of the constructor is employee. Of course, it should have the same name as the name of the class, only then can it be called a constructor. So employee name, so whenever an object is created, employee emp is equal to an object emp is created. So as soon as this object is created, this constructor is called. So when you write this program in any language like C++, C#, Python, you can see that whenever you create an object of a constructor, all the statements within that constructor get executed. So you need not wait to invoke this constructor using the object like emp.employee, like we were doing here. Here, how were we invoking this method? Using its object. We created an object and then we invoked this function, called this function object.function name. But in case of constructor, only this statement will execute that statements within that constructor. So whenever this statement gets executed, whenever this statement is executed, all the statements within that constructor get executed. This is also a way to invoke the constructor. So just keep these concepts in mind. You will not be required to create these constructors or enumerators. It's just that these constructors and enumerators are already designed in Spotfire API. So you should be able to understand how to access those elements of a constructor or an enumerator in Spotfire API. Okay. So this is also constructor, but it has a parameter. So just like we created an object without any parameter, here we are creating an object with a parameter. So it takes a parameter. So a parameter is passed at the time of invoking the constructor. And how is a constructor invoked? When an object is created. So the parameter is passed at the time of creating the object. So with this statement, constructor is invoked as well as this parameter 10,000 is passed. So these two statements get executed. A salary of 10,000 is assigned to the variable named salary, and this hello world is printed. This is based on C#. You just focus on the concept. Okay, so the components of Spotfire analysis comprise pages, visuals, filter panels. So to be able to access and manipulate their features, you should be able to access the classes defined for those components. When I say to be able to access the classes defined for those components, I mean that you should be able to access the properties and methods of the classes defined for those components. For example, you have to manipulate filter panel. So you should know how a filter panel class is designed, or is it a property which has to be accessed. So for example, when you create a page, you have a page in Spotfire, or a tab in Spotfire. So page is an object. Every component is an object in Spotfire. When you create a bar chart is an object. When you create a line chart, it is an object. When you create a table visualization, it is an object. So when you wish to manipulate, access the properties or methods of table visualization, you will be accessing the table class. Similarly, to manipulate the properties of a bar chart, you will be accessing the bar chart class. This is what we were doing here, right? There is a class called human. It has some variable defined. You can think of it as a property for now. And then you have a method designed, this sleeping. Now how do you access this method? Using the object. So in Spotfire, our object is the component, which is, for example, a pie chart. And how do you and to be able to access the properties of a pie chart, you will be accessing pie chart class. So you will go to Spotfire API, what I refer to 7.11. So for example, you are working with a bar, you added a bar chart in an analysis. So bar chart is an object. You will pass it into an object. Then you will have a reference to a bar chart object. So to access the properties and methods of a bar chart, you will go to bar chart class. And your object is the bar chart that is present in your analysis. So here is the bar chart class. This is the bar chart class. Just like we had human class, we have bar chart class here. If you expand this, you will see the set of methods and properties here. If I click properties, you will see these are the properties which are available. Just like we had member variables in the class human, like name, similarly we have properties here. And just like we had a method called sleeping in the class human in a slide, we have so many methods here designed. Bar chart methods. Just like we had a method called sleeping, we have these methods. So not all of these methods will be used during customization in Spotfire. So all of them are not so useful. We'll be using only select methods and properties. Okay, let's go back to our slide. So the constituents of a Spotfire DXP, like pages, visuals, or even the document, is an object. Hence the properties or methods of this objects will be accessed using a dot operator. So your Spotfire analysis is called a document. Remember that. When accessing the parts of a DXP, a hierarchy is followed. For instance, if a user needs to access a property of pages or a particular page, then the user should keep in mind that the pages are a part of the document. Hence, the pages will be accessed using application.document.pages. So here document is an object of the document class and pages is a property of the document class. Similarly, to access a filter panel, the sequence will be document, page, filter panel. So what I mean here is, whenever you access a component of Spotify, there is a hierarchy that you should abide by. For example, you want to access a particular page. Now page is a part of document, so first you have to access document and then its page. Similarly, to access the details on demand panel on a page, so details on demand panel is present on a page, so first you have to access that page and then the details on demand panel on that page. So and page in turn is a part of the document, so first you will be accessing the document, then page, followed by the filter panel. This is what is shown here. Sorry, details on demand panel. For example, you have to access filter panel on page 3. Now page indexing starts with 3 is 0. So page 2 refers to the third page. Now suppose you wish to access the filter panel on the third page. Now first you will access that page and then that filter panel. Now page is a part of the document, so first you will access the document, followed by the particular page and the filter panel on that particular page. Now there are many libraries in Spotify. People familiar with other programming languages must be aware of the namespaces which they import in their programs before using some properties or methods defined in those namespaces. For example, a Java programmer will import some input output functions, libraries into their Java programs using import.io.star. Star means all the classes. Or in C you must be using that library hash include stdio.h. So there are some of the input output functions which are not accessible by default, so you need to include the library or the namespace in which those functions are defined. So library is a collection. A library is a collection of classes, and classes in turn contains definitions of functions. Now to be able to access a particular function, you should include a reference to that class in your program. Now these classes are defined in libraries. So that is why we import certain libraries, because the methods defined in those libraries, the methods defined in the classes in those libraries are not readily automatically available. So we have to explicitly import those libraries into our program before being able to use the methods or properties defined in the classes in those libraries. For example, there is a library spotify.dxp.application. So there are some of the methods or properties for which you have to first include a reference to this. Similarly, when you are working with filter panels and filters, so directly you cannot write a program to access the filters. It will throw an error stating that this is not defined, that is not defined. Why? Because its definition is not definition to the function, method or property that you have used is not included in your program. And why that is not included? Because you have not included the library which contains the class which contains the definition of those methods or properties. So you need to include this library before writing a program to access the filters. Similarly, when dealing with visualizations and their features, you need to include these libraries. If you see here, this is the application. This is the library spotify.dxp.application.visuals. So it contains the classes for all the visualizations and the related properties of visualizations. So whenever you use a method or a function for visualization related to a visualization, you should include that library. spotfire.dxp .application.visuals. By including this library, I means all the classes or only the required classes from these libraries. That's up to you. For example, if you are dealing with a bar chart, working on a bar chart, so from this library you can include only bar chart class and leave out the rest. If you want to just include all the classes, you can include all the classes using star. We'll see how to do that. And there is spotfire.dxp data. So whenever you are dealing with data tables, markings, you need to include these libraries, because all the functions, methods and properties designed to access marking reference or filtering reference or data within your analysis are defined in the classes in this library, spotfire.dxp.data. So these are the most commonly used libraries. These are the libraries which you will be using most often, more often than not. Now, how do you include classes from a library? For example, when you are working with a line chart, you have a class called line chart. For a line chart, you can look up the API reference, which class corresponds to which visualization. For example, this box plot class corresponds to box plot visualization, and then you have a bar chart class which corresponds to bar chart visualization. Similarly, you have line chart class. So when you are working with a line chart, you can opt to include only line chart class and leave out the rest. Otherwise, you can write import star. So it will import all the classes from this visuals namespace. Okay. For example, from this library, we have imported all the classes. So this statement will import all the classes available in the namespace library. So my recommendation is to import all the classes from a library, because you never know in course of writing a script, if you are writing a very long script, you may end up using some properties or methods the reference to which is not included. So it's better to include all the classes from a library. Otherwise, you can always choose to include only the relevant classes. Let's start by learning the most basic element of a spotfire analysis, which is a page. So now a while earlier I said that there is a hierarchy to access a particular component in spotfire using IronPython. For example, when you are accessing a page or a set of pages, you must remember that pages or a page is a part of your document. A document is nothing but your report or DXP. So your DXP, that is your analysis. So how do you access a page or the set of pages? First, you access that document, your analysis, and then the pages of the document. So this is how you are accessing document.pages. Now application is, you can call it, it is the head of the hierarchy. You can just write document.pages or document.pages too and leave out application, but I would recommend that you write fully qualified name, that is application.document.pages. So this is the hierarchy through which you access a page or a set of pages. Now, what is the difference between these two pages? This statement will return a collection of pages. The name is self-explanatory, pages. Pages means a set of pages, plural, more than one page. So it is returning a collection of pages. And what is this doing? This is returning one single page at index 2. So the indexing of pages starts with 0, 0, 1, 2. First page means the page at index 0. Second page means the page at index 1. So if you write 1 here, it will point to, it will refer to the second page. We have written 2 here, this means it points to the third page. Now as we said, this statement returns a collection of pages, which is if you look at Spotfire API, there is a class called page collection. So whatever properties and methods are designed for a page collection can be used here with application.document.pages. For example, similarly, application.document.pages 0 refers to one page, that is the first page. Application.document.pages 1 refers to the second page, which is only one page. But application.document.pages refers to a collection of pages, more than one page. If you look at here in the Spotfire API, I said there is first you have to access the document followed by the page or pages, and that is contained in spotfire.dxp.application namespace. This is what we have written here, spotfire.dxp.application. So if you go to spotfire.dxp.application, you will find one document class. Yeah, this is the document class. So what your document is also an object. It is an object of a document class. You can relate it to the human class that we had created in one of the slides. So similarly, the document class contains properties just like human contained one member variable or a property. So how did we access the member variable and the methods of that human class? By creating its object, right? So similarly, the our document, Spotfire document, is an object of the document class. So we can access the properties and methods of document class using the document object, which points to our DXP. So we have one. Let's go through the properties, a quick glance. So here you see there is a property called pages, document.pages, and public page collection pages get means it can only return values. You cannot change the value of page collection, otherwise you would have found set also here written. Okay, so there is a property called pages of document class. Now we can create a document object and access the properties of the document class. Now what is our document object here? Our Spotfire DXP, which is the document. It has a property called pages, so we can access the pages property through that document. Now what is that object, document object? This is the document, and with this is the property of that document class. So this is basically containing an object of your document, object dot properties. So this is the pages property. Now if you look at the return type of this property, it returns a page collection type value. Now page collection type is itself a data type, right? Every class, it is a class. Page type collection is a class. So every class is a derived data type, if you can recall from object-oriented programming. So every class is a derived data type. Now page collection class, now that means this this document.pages is returning a collection of pages which is of type page collection. That means whatever methods and properties are defined in page collection, in the page collection class, can be used here with this statement. For example, there is a property called count. Take this for example, count gets the number of elements contained in this instant. So we can write application dot document this is giving me a page collection type value. Page collection, for example. Now this page collection contains a collection of pages in your document. Page collection is a class which is nothing but a data type, another data type. Now we want to know what all methods and properties can be used or are applicable to this collection of pages. So we will go to page collection class. We went to page collection class and saw that these are the properties which can be used with this collection of pages. So suppose we want to get the number of pages. So there is a property for that, that is count. So we can write here page collection dot count. Page count is equal to page collection dot count. Okay. Similarly, there is a property called navigation mode. We will see that later. So you can set navigation mode something like this. Page collection dot navigation mode equal to, we'll see how to set. Okay, so application dot document dot, so for this is how you trace back to the class it is pointing to. Application dot document dot, so for page is a part of a document. So first we access document and then pages. Now this returns a page collection type value. Now what all properties and methods are applicable to this? So we will go to page collection class. This is what we did, right? This is returning page collection document dot pages. Its return type is page collection. So to know what all methods and properties are applicable to the pages that are returned, we'll go to page collection class. Okay. Okay, so there is another property of document class which you can remember, active page reference, which refers to the current page of the analysis. Suppose there are 3 pages in the analysis and you are on the 3rd page. So active page reference to the 3rd page. If you are on the 2nd page of the analysis, then active page reference refers to that 2nd page. And this property you can use to navigate between pages, among pages also. For example, you are on 1st page or any page and you want to, suppose you are on the 1st page and you want to navigate to 3rd page, then you can set the reference of the active page reference to the 3rd page. For example, this statement will help you navigate to, will let you navigate to the 3rd page. So this way you can set up navigation in your analysis. For example, you have 3 pages in your analysis, page 1, page 2, page 3. Then you can, for example, set up a drop down list with the names of the pages, and then you can write a script that if that drop down list is, if selected value in that drop down list is page 1, then document dot active page reference is equal to application dot document dot pages 1 is 0. Sorry, if the selected value in drop down list is page 2, then application dot document dot active page reference is equal to application dot document dot pages 1. So this will let you navigate from one page to another page. Okay, so this is what I explained earlier, that for example you are dealing with a particular page. So each page is an object in Spotfire. So when you write application.document.pages 0, it returns a page type object. Now we want to know what all properties and methods are applicable to a page. So where shall we go? Which class shall we refer to? We'll refer to the page class. Just like application.document.pages returned a collection of pages, and we found that the return type is page collection. So to know what all methods and properties are applicable to a page collection, a collection of pages, we went to page collection class because its return type was page collection. Similarly, this returns a page object. So to know what all properties and applicables are applicable to a page, we will go to page class. For example, if we go here, document dot page class, you see here page class. So these are the methods. You can go through these. These will be barely used. These are the properties. Active data table reference property, which will return the data table reference of the currently active visualization. Filtering active filter screen, marking selection reference, which all corresponds to filtering, selection, and markings used on currently active visualizations. So these are the properties of a single page. So when you are dealing with a single page, you can use these properties. Don't get confused with page collection class. That refers to a collection of pages, but these properties refers to one page. For example, there is a property called title. When you want to loop through all the visualizations of one page, you can use this property. It will return a collection of visuals. See, it returns a value of type visual collection. Now, what all properties and methods can be used with this collection of visuals? We will go to visual collection class. If we go here, we see there are so many methods and some properties. Count, for example, to get the number of visuals in each page. So what you can do, you can in each page you can loop through the pages. Let's start with this. Suppose you want to get the number of visuals on page 1. So in that page 1, you can loop through all the visuals using that property application.document.pages 0.visuals.count. Okay, this application.document.pages 0.visuals.count will return the number of visuals on the first page. Let's write here application.document.pages 0.visuals.count. This will return the number of visualizations in the first page. So how we traced it? So all the visuals are present on each page. Visuals are present on each page. That's how you can think of. So this must be visuals must be a property of the page class. So we went to the page class and we saw these are the properties available. Visuals is one of those properties. Similarly, there is a property called title, which is nothing but the name of the page. Panels. This is where the hierarchy comes in place. When you access the visuals or panels, you know it belongs to a page individually. So when you are accessing a set of visuals, you go page by page. That's why you write page dot visuals, page 0 dot visuals, page 1 dot visuals, page 2 dot visuals. Similarly, for panels, panel is present on each page individually, independently. That's why you write page 0 dot filtering panel, page 1 dot filtering panel, or active page reference dot filter panel. Active page reference also refers to only one page, which is the active page. So This is how we use access pages. So application.document.pages refers to one page, which is the first page. Now to know what all properties and methods are available on a page, we have to go to page class. So this statement returns a single page object. So its methods and properties will be defined in page class. Just like we had human class, we created an object obj. So to know what all methods and properties can be used with the object obj, we checked human class, what all properties and methods are defined. Similarly here we will check the page class. There is a function. Okay, now with the page collection class there is one method, important method. How do we get page collection? Application.document.pages. It returns this one. This statement returns a collection of pages which is of type page collection. Now to know which methods and properties are applicable to a collection of pages, we go to page collection class. Page collection class, which is page collection class. So here you have method like add duplicate. For example, you want to create a duplicate tab or page, you can use this function. Suppose you want to create a duplicate of page at index 2. So you can write like this: application.document.pages add duplicate. Now if you see, it takes a parameter page which is of type page. So how will you write? You will write like this: application.document.pages. Suppose you want to create a duplicate of the third page. Okay, so this returns a page type object. This is what is required as a parameter here, right? Page of type page. And what it does, it returns a value of type page. This is a single page, right? Pages at index 2, the page at index 2. So it will create a duplicate of the third page. Okay, similarly there is a property called navigation mode. Now this property has get and set. That means you can change the navigation mode. Now to know, it returns a value of type page navigation mode. If you remember, application.document.pages returned a value of type page collection. So to know which properties and methods are available are applicable to a collection of pages, we went to page collection class. Similarly, we see here this property returns a value of type page navigation mode. So to know which methods and properties are applicable to a navigation mode, we'll go to page navigation mode. Okay. Now that is why I explained enumerator before. So here the values are defined as enumerator. We don't have anything like pages dot navigation mode is equal to tile links, pages dot navigation mode is equal to tabs, not like that. So there is an enumerator defined. So suppose you have to set the navigation mode to tabs, how will you write? We'll write page navigation mode dot tabs. For example, if I write here, suppose we have a text area, you can use a button to execute an error Python script. I am importing all the classes. Okay. Now to the collection of pages, there is a property called navigation mode. I want to change navigation, access or change navigation mode. To change, you need to learn how to access. So this is how we access navigation mode. Now point here to bear in mind is navigation mode applies to all the pages collectively. That is, navigation mode is a property of collection of pages. It's not that one page has one navigation mode, two page has no one another navigation mode, and so on. So that is why navigation mode is a property of page collection of pages, and that is why this property is defined in the class called page collection. Application dot document dot pages dot navigation mode. This section is called console. Output section is called console. You can use this to debug your code. For example, you are assigning some value to a property control in your analysis. I'm just giving an example. So before assigning, you can print those values and see if those values are if those values are getting returned correctly and properly or not. So for example, we can print here and see what is the current navigation mode. Tabs. So the current navigation mode is set to tabs. So once again I am stressing the fact that navigation mode is a property of collection of pages. That's why this navigation mode property is defined in the class called page collection. Here we don't write something like this. This is wrong. Navigation mode is a property of collection of pages, not a single page. Now suppose if you want to comment this out, you can use hash symbol. Let it be here. Now suppose you want to change the navigation mode, so you can write, or what you can do is you can create one variable. You can store the reference to the collection of pages in that variable. Now you can change the navigation mode is equal to, there is nothing like called tile, tabs or links. No, not like this. So there is an enumerator defined for all those values. That is why I explained in enumerator first. So how do we access the values of an enumerator? Let's go back once. Name of the enumerator week dot Monday. So here what we have in place of week, we have page navigation mode, and in place of Monday and Tuesday we have tabs, links, none. So to access this value, we will write page navigation mode dot tabs. To access links, we will write page navigation mode dot links, like this. Page navigation mode dot links. If you click on run script here, the script will be executed, or you can just click on OK and click on the button in that text area that we just created. I'm just clicking here, run. See, in the background the navigation mode changed to links. So this is how we access the properties of page collection, of a page collection of pages. So point here to remember, bear in mind is that property, does that property belong to a collection of something, a collection of items, or an individual item? So depending upon that, you will be using those methods. This navigation mode refers to a collection of pages. Theoretically, conceptually, navigation mode belongs to a collection of pages. It is not applicable to one single page at a time. So that is why this property has been defined in in the class called page collection. This part is returning a collection of pages. PC is containing a collection of pages. Now when we go to page collection class, we see there is a property called navigation mode which we can use. How do we use the navigation properties? Through an enumerator. If you print here, suppose you print here PC, print PC. Let's comment this out. Print PC. See what it prints, what it returns. Page collection. See, page collection. So it is returning a collection of pages. Now if I write something like this, print PC, let's write it. Okay, let's comment these two lines out. What it prints? Page. This is a single page. So this is nothing but the page class. Here also page collection is nothing but the page collection class. So this way you can find out which class you should refer to get the list of methods and properties which you can use with that object of that class. Okay, let's go back. Similarly here, add new is a method. This method is for a collection of pages. If you go back to page collection class, there is a method called add. So when you want to add a new element to a collection, that is, if you want to add a new page to a collection of pages, you can use this function method add new. Similarly, you can try out these methods. These are simple, and just check what parameter it takes. If it takes, is it of type string, int, page type, or any other type. The parameter should be of that type which it takes. For example, when we created a duplicate of a page, the parameter it took was the page which is to be duplicated. So we have to pass the page object as parameter, not the name of the page which is of string type. If you look at the definition of the function which is here, add duplicate, it takes page type, page object, page type parameter. That is why we have to pass page, complete page, application.document.pages 0 or application.document.pages 1, not just the title of that page which is of string type, but it doesn't take string type parameter, so it will not understand which page you are referring to. You have to pass the page. Okay. Now suppose we want to loop through the pages. So if I go back to our slides, for loop, as I told you, will be required to loop through a collection of pages, a collection of visuals, a collection of filters. So how do you loop? You use this structure for a variable in that collection. Similarly, to loop through a collection of pages, this is the structure we will use. For page, this is a user defined variable. You can use any variable here in place of page. For page in collection of pages, which is application.document.pages. Now each page is referring to one single page. Each page, the page variable, for every run of the loop, the page variable refers to one individual page, one single page. Remember that. So when you access the properties here, it should be of page class type. not page collection. For every run, this is returning a collection of pages, no doubt. But for every run of the loop, page is pointing to one single page. So when you try to access any method or property here, you should bear in mind that it is of page class. For example, title is a property of a page class. That is why we can use title property. So what this code will do, this code snippet will print the title of each page. So you can go to page class and see what all properties are applicable on a page. Okay, let's go to document properties. So how do you access a document property? For example, go back to Spotfire. I add one document property here. You can create a document property from here also. I am using Spotfire version 7, but even if you are using some other versions, IronPython will work the same way. So suppose document property. If I go to document properties, I create one document property here. Doc prop. Suppose let it be of string type. Okay. So how do you access a document property? Now again remember the hierarchy. What do you call it? Document property. That is, it is a property of your document. It does not belong to a single page or a single visualization. It belongs to the whole document, which is your Spotfire DXP. So the hierarchy to access a property will be document dot. Now how do you access a property? This is the property. This is how you access a property. Document dot properties and the name of the property within a pair of double quotes. Now again I recommend using fully qualified name, that is application dot document dot properties. So similarly here we can access, suppose we use the same script. We created one property called doc prop. Let's comment this lines out. Okay. So application dot document dot properties dot prop. Now let's print it and see what it contains. Okay, there is an error. That means the property name dot prop could not be found. That means I have typed the name wrongly. Let me go back and check. What are the properties? Do prop. Sorry, it's do prop. Let's print. Nothing, because we did not assign any value to the document property. Let's assign some value to the document property, and remember that the data type of the document property is string. So we can write application dot document dot properties do prop is equal to a. So ABC. Okay, let's run the script. So here we are not printing anything. Now let's print. It should print ABC. ABC. If I go back and check, document properties to prop. See, it contains ABC. So this is how we access a document property. You will not be required to do much with a document property. The only requirement with a document property will be to access and change its value more often than not. So this is how we access properties. Remember the hierarchy. For document properties, no classes are required to be imported in the script, but to be on the safer side, just have all the classes imported from the application library, spotfire.xp.application. Because in my experience, I have seen sometimes I don't import the classes from application library and I write document.properties, just these two lines, document words, document.properties and property name. Sometimes it throws some error related to definition, and just when I write a fully qualified name, the error goes. So I recommend using fully qualified name. Let's move on. So this is what I told. A document properties value is accessed using following statement: application document properties. Now this applies to document property controls also. For example, you have a label. You can access the values using the same method. If you have a drop down list, for example, I will show you here. Suppose I created a drop down list. Suppose I name it list drop down list. Let it be two values. Okay. Drop down list. Okay. So the name of the document property control is drop down list. Suppose I want to access the value of this property control. We can use the same statement that we have used here. It's just that the name of the property will change. Suppose I want to print see, this is what it is, fruit. The currently selected value is fruit. Similarly, it applies to a label. Suppose you have a multi-valued multi-select list box. It will return what it will return. It will return a collection of values, a list of values. If you have selected multiple values, this is what is written. Similarly, if you are using a list control like a drop-down list or a list box control, you can access the selected value using the statement. If more than one value is selected, as in the case of a multi-select list box control, it will show all the values as a list. Now, what is a list? It's another collection. It may or may not contain elements of the same tag. That means it can contain elements of different data types also. Now, there is a list here. How do you access the elements of a list? First element can be accessed using the index 0, just like you access the elements of an array. Consider this as an array, though it is not an array. So the first element is positioned at index 0, so we can access it using the index 0, name of the list followed by the index. Similarly, second element can be accessed using this statement, list fruits 1, and so on. Now when you use a multi-select list box control, it also returns a list of values. Now how do you access the values of that list? Name of that list followed by the index. What is the name of the list? This is the name of the list. This is the name of the list. Till here. Just like we have list fruits here, name as the name of the list. This is the name of the list box control. Application.document.properties property name. And how do we access the first element of a list? Name of the list followed by the index 0. Second element, name of the list followed by the index 1. So this is the list of values in the multi-select list box control. Just like we are accessing the elements here, in the same fashion we access the elements in a multi-valued list box control, because it returns a list of values when multiple values are selected. Now since it is returning a set of values, a list of values, we can loop through the values just like we looped through a collection of pages. Similarly, we can loop through a collection of selected items in a multi-select list box control, like here. For val, this is a user-defined variable. You can use any other name here, as long as abides by the naming convention of variables in Python. For value in, val in list of selected values. Now for each run of the loop, val will point to one selected value. So this way all selected values will be printed. Now one more thing here. Now this is returning a list of values. Now you can go to Python documentation and see list documentation on list in Python and see what all methods and properties are applicable on a list in Python. Those properties can be used on this list of selected values. Of course, those belong to list that is not specific to Spotfire. That is why we are not referring to Spotfire API to know which all methods and properties are applicable to a list. List is a part of Python inherently. So we have to check on the documentation on list in Python, not in Spotfire API. Lists are native to Python, not to Spotfire. Now there is one property called count, which gives the number of values in a list. So we know this statement returns a list of selected values, so that so we can get the number of values which have been selected using this statement. Now you want to access, so there is another way to access all the elements of a list containing the selected values. Here we looped through the values directly. We can access each value through its corresponding index also. This is what I explained earlier as an example at the start of the session. For example, you want to get the values from that list of selected values through their corresponding index. So that means you will have to loop from 0 to the length of the list -1. What does it do? Range returns values from 0 to c-1. If you remember our previous if you remember one of the slides dedicated to range function, this range function returns values from 0 to c-1. What is c? The number of elements in a list. And since the indices start at 0, the last index will stop at c-1. So that is why we have written like this, 0 to c+1. If we write c+1 here, it will run from 0 to c, and then it will return an runtime error, out of bound exception. So that's why we have kept it till c, so it will automatically run from 0 to c-1. That's what we need, because the last index will stop at c-1. Now for each run of the loop, so this I will refer to 0, 1, 2, 3 till the number of elements -1, and those are the indices. Now how do we access each value in a list? Name of the list followed by the index. So in every run of the loop, I contains an index, a value which can be used as an index. So we can access each value by writing the name of the list followed by the index. So when the loop runs for the first time, I contains 0. For example, there 4 values were selected. So when the loop runs for the first time, I contains 0. Now since I0 is in this list of items that is returned by range, this statement will be executed. Now what statement does this translate to? Application to document dot properties 0. So first element will be returned. Now next time when the loop runs, I will contain 1. Now this statement will change to application dot document dot properties 1. So second element will be printed. Similarly, when the loop runs for the next time, I contains 3, and this statement changes to application dot document dot properties 3. So that's that's when the loop ends. Suppose we have 4 elements, so the loop will start from 0 and run till 3. So this is another way of accessing the elements of a list, which in our case is a list of selected items in a multi-select list box control. And the simpler way is this. And since it returns a collection or a list of, to be specific, a list of items, you can check what all properties and methods are defined for a list in Python that you can use here. For example, count is a property which returns the number of selected values in C in a multi-select list box control. Okay, so let it be here till now. In the next session we will see how to access panels and other components in Spotify. Hope you find this session useful. Thank you very much. Good night.